Based on reports, the Minister of Finance, Dr. Nigel Clarke, has indicated that public sector workers should expect a modest increase in salaries in the upcoming financial year, as the government will give attention to Jamaica's economic recovery while focusing on the issuance of treatment to citizens who may need protection against the pandemic. Clarke mentioned that the government is not in a position to go ahead with the implementation of changes arising from the review of compensation in the civil service. As a result, he said that the government is seeking a one-year delay with respect to the commencement of the implementation of the compensation restructure, as it focuses on facilitating Jamaica's recovery from the pandemic. The government had put in place $239.2 billion for the compensation of employees in the new financial year. However, as a result of the massive impact of the pandemic, he says that they do not have the resources to start the implementation of the review and finance the recovery at the same time. He says that it is critical that whatever resources they can corral are used this year on vaccines, the distribution of vaccines, their social and economic recovery, inclusive of jobs, as well as social support of those who have been hardest hit by the pandemic. Unlike other countries, Jamaica's public sector has been largely shielded from the financial impact of the pandemic. He further went on to state that it is expected that the compensation restructure will start its implementation in the 2022-2023 financial year. The finance minister mentioned that the government will use this year to fine-tune the parameters of the compensation restructure with the unions. This financial year, the government is projecting to spend $830.78 billion to finance the affairs of Jamaica. This is a reduced figure when compared with the previous financial year. For 2020 to 2021, the government had put in place that they would spend $853.83 billion. But that was reduced to $850.24 billion, with the tabling of the third supplementary estimates of expenditure in Parliament in January. The estimates of expenditure tabled in Parliament recently include $776.58 billion for recurrent or housekeeping expenses and $54.2 billion for capital spending. According to Dr. Nigel Clarke, who tabled the budget in Gordon House, he mentioned that lower debt services costs and lower volume of loans to public bodies accounted for the difference in spending between the current fiscal year and the one that is upcoming. He emphasized that the budget changes should be viewed through that lens. He said that the full program is to be undertaken by the government during the 2021 to 2022 financial year. And of course, this will be outlined by Nigel Clarke in March 2021 during that budget presentation. He further emphasized that the pandemic has generated both a health crisis and an economic crisis during the current financial year. He further stated that this resulted in significant loss of revenue for the government. He noted that the hit to the revenues in 2020 to 2021 is estimated at an unprecedented decline of 11.3%, or $73.3 billion, in comparison with the 2019-2020 inflow of revenues. Despite this, overall expenditure is scheduled to be at 3.8%, or $24.2 billion higher than the 2019 to 2020 expenditure. If you were to look at the breakdown of the details of the budget for 2021 to 2022, it stands at $830.8 billion for total recurrent spending, there will be an amount of $776.58 billion. In relation to the compensation of employees, it is expected that the budget will hold $239.2 billion. For capital expenditure, an amount of $54.2 billion, and for debt servicing, $272.2 billion, and loans to public bodies, $17.3 billion. Based on reports, some PNP supporters did not stay away from the ceremonial opening of Parliament on February 18th. Despite repeated pleas for them to stay home, a group of hardcore People's National Party supporters made their way to the intersection of Duke and Sutton Streets to greet their members of Parliament and senators who were in attendance at the ceremonial opening of Parliament on February 18th. Significantly, however, there were no supporters of the governing Jamaica Labour Party at the traditional gathering spot at the intersection of Duke and North Streets. The resumption of Parliament is usually highlighted by the annual throne speech from the Governor-General and followed by the tabling of the annual estimates of expenditure by the government. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Let me know if you think about the matters that have been discussed in this session. What about the monies for these public sector workers? It has been delayed once more. This will only lead to further issues, I'm sure.